Yes, this presentation is for Glenn Davenport. This is, of course, Trenton Garman. I thought this would be a good opportunity to pitch to you as a potential angel investor. Give me patience, if you will, through this process. I know you like detail, and I do as well. I don't think there's any area that I'm neglecting to provide sufficient detail, some of which, though, however, is yet obviously to be developed. This is a proposal for what we're referring to as the Billy Club application. It is an angel investor request for $200,000 for 10% ownership. That's over 18 months, an initial disbursement of between $20,000 and $50,000. That would be for the iOS store, the launching of the Apple version, and also the Droid version. The individual that's developing the app is a guy named Santiago Leon. And I think you'll see it has some significant potential value, not just in revenue, but in overall company worth. My goal, because I've seen you do it, work up, build a company out, and sell it off, at least the working up and building out part of it, is to develop it and sell it within 12 to hopefully 18 months. And I have a goal of $30 million. So the Good Cop, Bad Cop Citizen Reviews Billy Club is the app that I'm pitching to you in conjunction with my friend Santiago Leon, who is an app developer. The basis of the app is just the reality that we don't know much about these 640,000 law enforcement officers. It is an app designed for citizens to be able to review, just like Google and the other Angie's List review services that are out there. Unfortunately, there's a huge, just gaping need for information with regards to corporate municipal police officers. And again, good cops, bad cops, citizen review. 10%, 11% of the population is considered to be on a psychiatric schedule as potentially dangerous. So that does not negate application as we know in law enforcement. So who are some of these people that we're encountering? We usually do not know until after the fact, like the tragedy of Derek Chauvin and George Floyd. Now, I'm not defending George Floyd or Derek Chauvin, but this app would have brought significant value to the situation, and it will indisputably take off depending on how and who launches it, whether it's us or somebody else. So it will eventually be a profiling mechanism for law enforcement, and I'll show you why. I don't want to get into a lot of information about the philosophical basis, but I do want you to be mindful, Mr. Davenport, that municipal corporate police, if they join the fraternal order police, and even more reason to make this public information discernible and funnelable and able to be displayed to the citizens and is driven by the citizens, because they are taking an order of financial security and secrecy among the fraternal order police. But that's irrelevant. We want good police, we want safe police, we want good sheriffs, we want good troopers. The way to do that, though, is to profile, and our goal is 90% of active law enforcement officers within 18 months. The reason it's got significant public safety value is because anyone pulled over, and I'll show you that in future slides, could immediately know who it is that they're encountering. There's also the indisputable value financially from the top 800 apps that are downloaded. Number 800 brings in $3,000 in revenue a day. That's the bottom 800. Number 200, so 1 to 200, number 200 brings in $82,500 of revenue a day from apps. So I think the values between, if it flopped, kind of like church did, which technically it didn't even necessarily flop because we were in excess of the averages for the people, but there was no run out of cash. It was just a removal that's worked out for the good, so converted to the Catholic. But I think bottom end, you're looking at $200,000 to $30 million value in 18 months. I don't think that the numbers or the need for information could dispute that that's a fair speculative range, good faith range. It will provide real-time law enforcement profiles. I've got three departments, three municipal departments. I'm going to launch it just like the ARC launches the churches. I'm going to focus on three areas with mailer, have meetings, social interest meetings in those areas, get club members to download the app. We'll go ahead and put up the profiles that we have, and then those members can add and create profiles as we go. Then we'll replicate that in three other cities, launch. And of course, the mailers and social media are what makes it take off. Again, unfortunately, I know it's a successful model as far as launch goes because I did it and was successful, but the sustaining of it and that church model is fundamentally different. Yet, point being, we're using that for the launch pad and the gathering and marshaling of members and the creation of profiles. Yes, 99% of police and law enforcement officers are good and great, but as a numbers man, if you can imagine, there's 2 million stops a year, 50,000 a day. It is certain that things go wrong, indisputably, just by statistic, that are not the citizens' fault. Here's some example of Google sample reviews. Clark Hall, a good friend of mine who's an attorney up in Ottawa County. That's how Google rates out all kind of people. Doctors, American Family Care, Hot Rod Barbershop, great clips. I'm sure even J Foods has a rating on Google. But you get pulled over by somebody in a paramilitary vehicle who has immediate access to almost any information they'd ever want to know about you or your loved ones within seconds. They have a gun, a badge, taser, probably an assault rifle, and you don't know anything about who it is that's pulled you over. So this will allow for these type of profiles to be created. Here's a need. A police officer up in, oh goodness, where was that? Minnesota has shown how even those of the most minorities seemingly responsibly protected category of people, a Black Latino Army officer. So he's a lieutenant in the United States Army. He knows how to be screamed at, yelled at, and still obey. This officer ended up pepper spraying him. They fired the police officer. Well, the incident happened. And the reason the incident happened is because of poor training and a lack of knowledge or a lack of awareness. A crucial need to know is that each individual stopped by a corporate municipal police officer, if they feel that there's a situation that could become dangerous and they're subject to harm, they can call or ask the officer to call a trooper or sheriff to come to the site, because corporate municipal entities are just that. They're corporations. So cities have the effect of an outdoor mall cop in a way that are going unreviewed and are causing problems like we see for this Black Latino lieutenant. And also this Gabby Patelia, another story. Unintentional mistakes is what the investigation reports, but corporate municipal police bullied her. She wasn't even sure who they were and was scared to death. And there are stories of women being raped. They don't call it rape because they over a beat down investigative time period, they end up consenting to sexual acts or agree to be used for whatever purposes. And those are stories of. So because these are real life stories, Syracuse, New York, 8-year-old boy, he had stolen some shit. Shouldn't be stealing, but they cuff him, 8 years old, sobbing. Those are the things that need to be reviewed. If something's accusatory and false and defaming, the officer will have the right, it's built into the code that we're already working on, to dispute that, and those things will be removed. But if, for instance, like Clark Hall here, he's got a 4.4 out of 5. Over the years, Mr. Hall and his staff have become family, 5 stars. So just like in the center portion, you see the opportunity for a reviewer to post how many stars and details. That's a star block which I've been working on coding in Xcode and JavaScript. That's basic and easily created through string and coding on the back end, and that's a text block. So we can build that and have built the initial Xcode. Santiago Leon, again, is out of Miami. He's a primary app developer. He runs a company called InstaBible and S. Leon Productions. InstaBible was a hot app, and still is hot, experienced a lot of downloads. It delivers a random Bible verse and puts it onto a background for sharing. But he's developed tons of apps, and he's working to get this coding prepared to get launched. These are other examples. There are some police department general profiles, but no profiling app again on individual officers. And we need to know when someone's pulled over your wife, your grandchildren, your neighbor, you would like and they would like to have something like the Billy Club app. On the right hand side, for me at least, you can see what the home screen would look like. Welcome to, it does look like the Billy Club. All these are files are already available to place into both Xcode and Android version. That has to be done on the back end. Those are the applications that do the coding. And then they create this API and projection of the code on the back, from the back end of things. So real-time Leo profiles, the search bar there, as you can see, blank, simple, like Google, like Apple. Because people are going to have been pulled over, they're probably a little nervous, or a lot of nervous, frantic. But with a last name and a badge number, the last name or badge number, they can search. And if there has been a profile, it's again, it's our goal to have 90% of the profile created, then they will see a profile, generalized one, and then there'll be a detailed one they can click on for that particular police officer. Here's an example, and it transcends race. And these are 5 African Americans. That was the story up in Memphis where they basically went rogue. Picture of a white lady pulled over by an African American. I mean, it's typical that most officers are friendly and kind, but to be a deterrent, this app will help with the concerns that a lot of citizens have. So our idea again is to keep it as basic and simple and be candid as an angel investor. My goal is to sell it to Google in 18 months with 90% law enforcement America, the corporate municipal police profile, and to sell it for $30 million. So Google will buy plugins like that boom, quick. As soon as it's developed and done, and it's got good momentum and good numbers, they'll purchase it. Here's an example of how those profiles will look. Sheila Flick, these are legitimate people. I know Sheila Flick and Joshua Russell from my hometown, Gadsden, Alabama. Like the flag, Gadsden, don't tread on me, Alabama. So for her hypothetical profile, which we created, but she's a real person, and this is how the profiles will look when Citizen created. She's got 5 out of 5 stars, 4 reviews, Gadsden Police Department, you see displayed there, and a green flag. You go kind of juxtapose of that, or 2 over, you see Derek Chauvin, red flag, 1 out of 5. So the day before George Floyd's encounter, if this profile was active, this is probably what it would have looked like. It would have said yet convicted, incarcerated. But I'm sure, based on what we understand now in his history of the been as an officer, he would have had complaints. Joshua Russell, another example, 34 reviews. We break it down into 4 categories, which I have utilized for trademark purposes, and I'm sending in a patent provision. Don't have to necessarily have a patent for this because it's one of these areas where it's arguably distinct, but it's arguably on an open domain and anybody could create it quickly and utilize the value from the idea. But we've broken it down based on my civil rights experience as a lawyer and time as relative of the sheriff, James Jones, sheriff of Shelby County for about 30 years, was my mom's first cousin, and worked as a civil activist in the 4 categories, 2 being positive, 2 being potentially negative. The reason I've done that is because we want to celebrate the good officers. So the service merits and protection badges, protection merits, they're there. And then reported civil rights abuses, which would be police brutality, things of that nature, or professional abuses. And that's just professionalism, which obviously doesn't carry as much weight. But we have those categories as pre-programmed modes through which that the more detailed review can be provided. And you see at the bottom, club member, writer review. So these are reviews for the download of the user who is wanting to profile a police officer versus the members who create them. Those are 2 of the distinctions that need to be made about who will be utilizing the app. Users who want to utilize it for the purpose of knowing the safety, likelihood of a police officer, potential for risk, and then those who are actual Billy Club members, kind of like a dream team or small group. Those are the ones who are leaders of the group. Those are the ones that are creating the profiles in the cities as the applications are launched in multiple jurisdictions. Once a person's open the app, this is the example, the three screens, two being reviews, one being an opportunity. We've got private security dispatch on here, but the intent is to make the person aware, more likely not replace that with a local sheriff's office or just 911. But we want to inform the individual using the app that if they're a red flag, that officer, if they have a constitutional right to get a deputy sheriff or trooper to the scene. This is how a Billy Club member would initially create a profile, and also if you're signing up, how you would sign up. Members, most basics to start the email funnel. This is what they call it. It's a typical term of data being crunched. Email, name, phone box. As basic as it can be, because we don't want people to fumble or not want to put too much information in, because whatever, fill these things out, sitting in the car at a red light or sitting in the coffee shop and not get distracted. So we want to get that initial information, get them to download it. And I'll show you why we want them to download it, because that's the best way, tested and tried, to evaluate the value of the app. They rate it like 60 to I think $1.05, $1.10, what I see per download is the anticipated revenue average. And so that matters. When creating a Leo profile, here's how that's done. Middle portion, that's what will display on the application. I have the application already, as I said, built out and tested through Xcode for the iPhone version. You can see this says the Billy Club app is no longer available. It's just because we're working on it. It's in the beta test version. But that is what would display each one of these individual units on the presentations, how it would look on the phone. So officer's name, text box, officer's badge, text box. This is for a person to create the profile, and of course another person will be able to access that. Department, and then just basic 5-star. So boom, they can create one with just 5-star review, 1-star, 3-star, whatever they want, but no more information than the name, badge, number, and the officer's department. They can also upload a picture, and this is crucial, because we want to give the opportunity for YouTube links and pictures to be uploaded, because it creates an additional value in the storage and the dissemination of data. I believe, just like with other content-based applications and websites, that we could potentially have another revenue stream from police officers' application process and ordering of their detailed profile by departments that are potentially going to hire them, or other purposes. I mean, you may have court order, guy gets sued for something, he orders, and I'm planning to for lawsuits, because I'm sure we will get sued. It's just indisputable, and that'll be built into the budget. But I've already thought through how things like that could occur. I can't see anything except for maybe a safety claim that maybe the phone app didn't work, or a suit by a police officer for defamation. But if the process, which it is, has been properly done, available, then any disputes they have of defaming Coast, we get the opportunity to review that. So I think for the most part that it's like launching any other business and taking into consideration the risk. As I said, on the side there, you'll see the far right, you'll see the 4 categories. If they want to do a detailed content Leo review, Leo profile submitted, they'll see that checkbox where they could add service merits, protection merits, reported civil rights abuse, reported professional abuses. So I can go in there and post positive from a neighbor, Sheila Flick, who I go to church with, or Josh Russell, who I know from just around town. I can post service merit. There's a story about Josh. A month or 2 ago, a kid was on the bike or something crossing the street. He ran out there and got him. I don't think he was going to get hit, but it was close enough. It's dangerous. So that's posted on Facebook. So somebody could post that, not just on Facebook for a timeline, never gets seen, but their neighbor, the friend, the mama that had the kids saved could post a service merit on there, a protection merit, or in the story. So then he is not just treated like the other cops, good cop, bad cop, bell-shaped curve in any system. He's able to have that memorialize over time all the service and the protection merits that was accumulated. There can also be a method that we have for anonymous review, which we would know the individual, but there'd be no information posted about their identity on the profile. We're still working through how it should be stewarded with regards to those who profile a law enforcement officer but are not concerned about their identity. A lot of times with their email, that's the name of the post. So we haven't decided if their name's in the post on there yet or how that will work. But the purpose is for the profiles to be created, not necessarily who's accessed after the creation of the profile, but we're not going to hide anybody's identity to the defamation of an officer. We do want to make available anonymous reports. Of course, we can check out the report of police brutality. We'll send us some pictures, show that this happened. And we will reveal it, of course, upon compulsion of court order, which would just be subpoena if that, probably when that occurs. Anticipating 18 months may not occur, but for someone in the future, something like that will occur, and that's how we would address it and stay in good standing. Action plan is for a freedom of information request. We got the three departments already beginning in the process of profile. Gadsden City is probably an 89% profile. Montgomery is probably 10% profile. Birmingham Police Department maybe 20, 25% profile. But the intent is to make sure that we get as much as we can content as we launch it, build up the good officers, celebrate them, and let the natural attrition of bad officers, just because they're not called to that, not called to be in that public service, they don't have to do it. So we'll build out those profiles, work with Santiago Leon for the continued code development at Xcode, which is for Apple and Android version. Graphics package, as you see, been worked on. I think we do need to have cards and some letterhead. But the key is going to be not just particularly the coding, but the coding and launching them with mailers in those cities and getting initial downloads. As it put in the prior audio portion here, our request is for $200,000, 10% ownership, $50,000 over the first 10 weeks, and lines of credit up to $200,000 if necessary for the first 18 months for the rights of first reimbursement. I'm not going to cheat, lie, steal. I'm going to work hard and speak truth. That's what the numbers say, and make corrections as needed to ensure that it's successful. Here's another example of how the app would generate profiles, Noah Boyd, 5 reviews, 5 stars, versus Amber Brown. She's a known officer in Etowah County. She has the police department causing big problems. So these would be red flag versus green flag versus a yellow flag. So a 2-star corporate municipal police officer is profiled. Person can decide, do I feel safe or not feel safe? Red flag, they should call. One way I think liability may exist is if we project somebody based on profiles as being a green flag, but they should have been a red flag, but we can't necessarily change any of those things. It suits, unfortunately, litigious cultures, those things happen. But that is best practices in the app. Indisputably has up to $30 million worth of value in 18 months if handled the right way. So to build out the 20,000s app build out from code and concept to fully functioning GPS profile, citizen-driven app. $30,000, that's the first 50, 20 for the coding, 30 is intended for launch purposes, miscellaneous purposes, all of them itemized. A problem with process of best practices, having bookkeepers in place, and I have no plan to handle any money. But those mailers are typically 5 to 10, 15,000 bucks, depending on how big you want the mailer to be. I think we'd need to do probably 5 per city for the first 3 cities, and I'm certain we would see good downloads and good results. In the revenue expectations, this is distinctions from data and image asset value. 2 ways to look at online revenue, which I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with. I know that Andy did a lot of work with crunching numbers and making tech and many spinning parts work. But there are 2 revenue streams. They're really two value streams. A revenue stream is you have the day-to-day operations, which does literally have potential of $3,500 to $82,500 a day, as I understand it. For 800 bottom, like the bottom 800 to the 200 most down of that. Those are revenue, real expectations. Then the expectation at the point of sale, of course, being value, because the data and the images themselves have value. That's where Facebook, all these social media companies, and yeah, I'm the guy that filed, and you know me, that I filed a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against Facebook and ended up getting basically copycat and taken from me over data, because that's where the companies online are making their money. So marketing and the data, and data is really the largest corpus value piece, if you will. So how many apps make $1 million? It's just a Google I did and some screenshots I posted on there for you. Nearly 1,000 apps earned $1 million for the first time in 2021. You can take the numbers for what they say they are. Not guaranteeing anything that is not true or could be brought to pass, but I'm guaranteeing truth, hard work, and obviously accountability. So this is what I believe we could expect. 500 downloads would be low, probably for a one-time launch for 3 cities, but some cities may be at a point where sustainability, about 500 is sufficient, and that's for users, not necessarily not members who are the ones who create the profiles. And I just think a launch big and hard, see these kind of numbers easily pulled off. And that's again just phase one, getting the downloads and getting the people to begin to engage and interact with the app. The numbers, 100, is it 60 to $1.20 per download is what they average. If you're evaluating how much an app is worth, it's a $45 billion a year market, and it's only growing. How much money the apps make per download, that's how they vary. It averages from 60 cents and $1.20. So that's where these numbers come from. The whole $1,469 per minute rate is what Tinder's making. Imagine that. Tinder, $1,000, $1,400 a minute, or $88,000 an hour. Now, this has capacity to be as large as Tinder and some of the other apps. From this perspective, everyone in the world is concerned when they have an encounter with law enforcement. So the use of the app is so significantly great in potential that I put these numbers out there because I think it would be a question of, when we do the small things well, just making sure that we can keep up and continue to do the small things well. How much money do free apps make? Around 70% of apps contain advertising that generates payments per display or pay per click. And that's how the model of revenue built out, with the data having the value. Of course, the public safety is something you can't put a figure to, but and that's fulfilled. But the end game, in my mind, is selling the app as a plug-in to Google or to one of these major, could also be to another shark, if you will, that has an interest in online safety platforms. So I do think the value is 200,000. I just can't imagine being less than that, 18 months to 30 million. Santiago is based out again out of Miami. He's done a bunch of apps available for your questions. We can do a video Zoom chat and talk through it. But this is what we want to put in the hands of the citizen, is something that looks like that. Basic application. I don't know why the yellow, the purple line. Sometimes with these apps, the glitches that are fixed are based on pixels. They're squares. All those are squares, just displaying one thing over the other. So the overlays take constant time to kind of wrinkle all that out. But that's what we would want for whoever's watching George Floyd or your wife or somebody else encounter and engage a police officer back and forth. We want them to have this kind of access to say, hey, sir, this looks like you've had some bad reviews. I'd like to call someone, or hey, get off his back. We're calling somebody, and here's why. E911 operator. The Billy Club app says Officer Chauvin's got 1 out of 5 stars. We need a trooper here. He will not get off this guy's back, and we think he's abusive. That call just makes a difference. If anybody ever shows up, that call still goes out in the atmosphere and makes a difference. And as that's replicated in the digital world, I think it's going to have a significant impact. So it's the public safety tool number one for we the people. Again, the idea is to celebrate the good cops, create profiles on good cops and the ones who end up having encounter issues. Some people just do not have the personality type and demeanor. to be a police officer, and some are not properly trained, and so this will help show those who are in position of authority how to best train the officers that may not be fulfilling the most professional standards of care, and for sure to address those who are safety risks. Here's our contact information. I'm going to send this link to you, Lord willing, by email. And so if you have any questions, feel welcome to reach out to us. We would like for you to consider investment of $200,000 over 18 months with an initial infusion of $50,000, strictly controlled by you with all feedback necessary. And the idea that I would like to not just put this on the open market for the crowdfunding, but have someone that can have an interest vested with me, maybe bi-weekly huddles of 5 to 15 minutes on the phone for feedback. So that's our perspective. We do hope that you see the vision and invest in the Billy Club. Good cop, bad cop, citizen reviews, opportunity. Peace be with you.